Welcome to the Epik Mellon podcast, conversations with the real humans behind broadband networks, cybersecurity, and the future of communications. Brought to you by QA Cafe.
In this episode, I sit down with Matt Langlois, my colleague here at QA Cafe, to talk about the past, about being an audiophile, and why tool is a metaphor for the tinkerer spirit.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Epik Mellon podcast, where I have in person with me Matt Langlois from QA Cafe, who's our customer success guru. I hate using that word because it's like it's like VP of customer success. He's the VP of customer success. But I'm going to talk about how he got that way, because it's like a collection of skills that you sort of acquired over time that have more to do with like the technical knowledge of people's products and how everything than it does anything else. Anyway, I'll get there in a minute. It's been a day. It's as usual. The Epik Mellon podcast is funded by our employers, QA Cafe. So our opinions are ours and do not represent those of QA Cafe or its management. And as such, there are three major products that QA Cafe offers. The first is CD Router, which is the industry standard test solution for broadband gateways, Wi-Fi routers, and other customer premises equipment, or CPE, which is a very, very confusing acronym if you try to use it for any form of SEO on Google, because there's like this like accountant test or something out there, like exam, it's just covered. CD Router contains thousands of fully automated test cases designed by network experts, covering feature validation, stability, certification, and performance all in one. Moreover, QA Cafe's world-class support team acts as an extension of your own, helping you understand the technologies and build better products overall. Our second product is called CloudShark. CloudShark is the way to make network packet captures an easy and useful part of your cybersecurity workflows. CloudShark helps you work through tough issues together without passing around large trace files, losing data, or risking security leaks of valuable information, and helps entry-level analysts learn from your senior experts, curate best practices, and standardize operating procedures around packet captures. Lastly, QA Cafe's Passport is a fully automated solution for testing the connectivity and interoperability of IoT and smart home devices. I like this level because you can see all my gestations better. Testing with Passport is as simple as connecting your device, selecting tests, and getting clear pass-fail results with full log data and packet captures to find and resolve bugs before they end up as a bad review of your product. To find out more about CD Router, CloudShark, and Passport, visit us at www.qacafe.com. So I've known Matt for a very long time. He used to be my boss at an entirely other different organization that we both came from, which was a good time of how, I don't know, like I've told the story of how I've gotten into networking a couple times, and obviously, my field of study is all over the map. But I wanted to at least start with that conversation, because doing what you do now for QA Cafe is very, very different from what you started at and what you went to school for.
It is.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, going all the way back to the beginning, I started as a double E major at UNH. That's where we met. We both worked at the IOL. That was a long time ago. I've known you for probably 20 plus years now.
It's been 20 years, yes.
It's been a very, very long time.
Yeah.
Actually, that reminds me, we should put the picture of you with the long hair up on here after.
Oh, people need to see that.
You got to dig that photo up and share it with people. That's pretty. I love looking at that.
I didn't even think of that. No, you're totally right. So I used to have it in high school. I had hair down to like here. I cut it my first year of college before I went to UNH. Yeah. But there's a picture that keeps circulating around.
Yeah. So it started at UNH, and I was a double E major. I got into double E really because I had a curiosity for electronics. It's kind of crazy how that all came about. I remember my dad was kind of a tinkerer, and so I picked up on that and fixing things, taking things apart, playing with things, trying to understand how they work. That's what sort of led me to double E as a major. And when I was at UNH as an undergrad, I heard about the IOL from a few friends that had gotten jobs there.
That's the Interoperability Laboratory.
Yeah,
it's a mouthful that we don't say often, but it's UNH IOL. It's where a lot of us started. here at QAFA.
And so I applied, and I think it took me 2 semesters to get in there. And I never thought I would get into networking, but the IOL was a great opportunity. I learned a lot, and I started there in the DSL consortium, going way back. And that's where I ended up meeting you.
Right.
So yeah, it's very different. And since that time, I've now transitioned from sort of electronics curiosity, which is how it all began, into the networking space, into project management for a little while here at QA Cafe, and now I'm doing customer success, customer support kinds of things, and that kind of ties in some other interests that I have, which is analysis and understanding, how best to utilize products to improve the efficiency in day-to-day testing that a lot of our customers have to do.
Right, because so we both went to business school at UNH too, and Matt nerded out way more about the statistics side of things than I ever did, and I love that stuff. But like, if you want some
spreadsheet,
I remember the first time that you were like, "Here's my regression analysis worksheet. Do what you will."
Yeah, that side of it is so much fun. I enjoy that, the data side of it. Working with large data sets and trying to identify trends and indicators for certain trends and things of that nature. That was a lot of fun. And going to business school after having an engineering degree, I thought was fantastic too. You followed a similar trajectory, but for me, doing that helped really cement how engineering, plays a huge role, of course, but there's this other world, which is all the business side of things that I hadn't even thought of or considered when I was just focused purely on engineering. Right? So having both viewpoints really, to me, was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And kind of shaped the future for me. And that's how I sort of ended up in the position that I'm in today. So,
Right. Yeah, because it's like you never lose the original stuff. So you're always filtering, because there's a lot of people that we know that have sort of done that track in their lives. A lot of people have been on the show before, and you never lose the original knowledge that you had, and so you start filtering what you know about it. Like I remember, the whole class that we had on managing emerging technologies. Right?
Yeah.
It's like having the background that we had going into something like that helps you put the stuff that you know about. Okay, I'm designing this thing for this product, but there's this entire other world of things that influence the design of that have nothing to do with with the engineering with the engineer quality of what's going on underneath, right? And it affects when it comes out, it affects why it comes out, it affects how good it is at the time, and that's what we end up running into now, right? With a lot of the products that we see.
Yeah, I mean really, there's a lot more that goes into running a successful business than just the engineering. Engineering is obviously extremely important, but there's all of these other things: marketing, sales, support. When you have these different viewpoints and you kind of put it all together, you can understand how they all work together to produce a successful product and experience.
Right.
And I picked up on a lot of that going through business school at UNH.
Right.
Following the engineering degree, so that was a really awesome experience, actually. And I was able to apply a lot of that too at the time to some of the things I was doing at the IOL, and I still utilize a lot of that knowledge today in everything that I do on a day-to-day basis.
Right. And the engineering stuff too, right? It's
totally.
Not just from the protocol perspective, because I kind of joke where it's you eventually you go up the OSI stack until you're outside of it, right? But just the knowledge of networking protocols and how deep that goes ends up influencing how it is that we end up doing customer success, because that has to go all the way back down to the developer that's looking for help, right? So it's we know what they have to deal with, and we can help them solve their problem, while putting it in the larger context of what's going on, right? And we run into that a bunch lately, where it's because one of the things that I wanted to talk about was how things have changed over time from our perspective. when it comes to the kinds of customers that QA Cafe has and how CVE development has changed. And what we've seen is that operators are sort of taking a larger like control over things. Like they're trying to be like, okay, right. And as a result, now like you're in a position where you're actually helping coordinate people who are customers of each other, right?
Yeah, no, we connect a lot of dots, and it is fascinating to look at how things have changed over the past 10 to 15 years. I've been at QA Cafe now 16 and a half years, something like that. And the world we live in now is much different. And as you said, a lot of it involves sort of providers taking more control over the software stack. So we have a lot more involvement now with some of these open source software stacks that are being developed, and
which is different now too, because that didn't, other than OpenWRT, that which has slowly evolved over time. That really hasn't been a reality on a large scale until now. Right.
Correct. Right. So it's a lot more open now. There's a lot more visibility into what's going on. There's a lot more contributions from the larger community, and that's great. It's awesome to see that. It will help to make those open source operating systems better over the long term, and also it gives people a little more flexibility, and they can tailor it to their specific needs as well. So now that has sort of started to happen, we actually end up working with obviously the providers on one end all the way down to the chip makers, and they're all contributing to this, but in a different way. So
right.
It's really neat to see that. There's different people who have different points of view as things are evolving now in the CPU space.
Right. How would you say that contrasts to the way it was before?
I look back to the old days. I call them the old days. It wasn't that long ago. But, everything was sort of concentrated down. The whole solution was built by the ODM or the OEM.
Right.
And with minor modifications that could be applied, of course. So we've shifted now. A lot of the work originally was helping those OEMs and ODMs build a complete entire product, and now they're building one piece of it. There's open source operating system software stack that's getting put on top of that. They can now be developed independently at different cadences, which is cool, and they come together in an integrated product, which the provider basically has a little more control over. So it's definitely very different than it was. Now there's a lot of people contributing to the finished product, whereas before it was really done by one primary vendor.
Right. And they might have outsourced certain parts of it.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah. And a lot of times we would never even see that. Right.
And obviously there's a huge need for testing now, because there's a lot of different people that are touching the product along the way. Right. So testing becomes all that much more important. You have to test the hardware. You have to test the software. You have to test the integration of it. You have to test the end user sort of functionality. Like when you bolt all these things on together, does it actually work the way that you expect?
Right.
I think one of the real advantages to the new world, the new way of doing things, is that the software side of things can develop much more rapidly.
Right.
The software is not necessarily sort of bound or locked to the hardware. Not that it was, hard locked to the hardware back in the old days, but now the software can develop very, very, very rapidly.
Right.
And the hardware naturally is a little bit slower in terms of evolution and development, so that they both can now evolve at their own pace, which is great.
Right.
You don't have to worry about.
Oh, that's a good point.
The hardware slowing down development on the software.
Right. That's a good point, because I was gonna ask / bring up the fact that it's a little tough. I've noticed that it's a little tough for the people who have been in the previous roles their whole lives to kind of adjust to the new software pace. Right. But that's a really good point, where it's like now those people can go and do their jobs and they don't have to worry about the rest of it. Right. Yeah.
I mean, the software development world has also obviously evolved a lot. Like significantly over the past 10 years. And now a lot of those same principles, practices are being applied to open source router software.
Right.
And it's really neat to see that actually happen, because now things happen really quickly.
Right.
And, there's a lot of different contributions from a lot of different people, which is also awesome. And so the pace of things has picked up significantly on the software side.
Right. I mean, I've actually always found it very interesting that agile as a thing is really a people thing, right? It just so happens to have come from the software world. And so there's so many components that are built around that are built to work that way that we now use for anything, right? But it all started with that.
Yeah, you can apply a lot of agile methodologies to lots of different things in life, right? Managing people, managing software projects.
What is it that Tim did?
He's like, or whatever.
His dog adoption business.
Yeah. The real, in my opinion, the real key to the agile philosophy is just rapid evolution.
Yeah.
Right. And constant improvement of things, which is perfect. We should all strive for that all the time. So,
Within reason. Yeah. So again, along the lines of not losing what you sort of originally like, you still are a hardware nerd at the end of the day, right? And like, because I notice where it's like when it comes time for us to like try out a new CD router platform, it's like Matt is like, that's like the excitement, but also the audio stuff too. That you've been in sort of the whole time.
Yeah, I'm a tinkerer. I always have been. I like taking things apart, playing with them. I enjoy the challenge of fixing something that's broken. So working with my hands is something I really like doing. The audio thing is interesting. I mean, that might be the original thing that got me into engineering and into networking. Yeah, I remember growing up as a kid. I have another passion, which is not playing music, but listening to music and discovering new types of music. I've always done that. Music and audio for me started at a young age. I remember my parents had like this old, like 1970s from when they were in college, stereo system in the living room. And there was a pair of headphones there and a bunch of audio music to listen to and a tuner. So I'd listen to the radio, and I would literally sit there and just listen to the radio, spin the dial, find different radio stations playing different music. And my dad was also a music lover, so he always had music playing in the background. I think that's where it all started for me. So specifically sitting there in the living room with the headphones on, running through the FM dial, finding interesting music and listening to it. I absolutely love that.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's really cool. Because I think one of the things I find frustrating about now is some of them do a good job, but for the most part, the new way that we consume music isn't really good at showing you new stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
I get stuck now. Like the way music is delivered now is fantastic, right? You can have this library of millions of songs at your fingertips, which you never could do. I grew up in the cassette and CD era, right? So if you wanted music, you could either maybe find something neat on the radio, or you had to go out and spend money and buy it and amass this.
And it would be a complete album where people went and actually thought about making complete albums as an artistic product, right?
But in some respects, that I kind of miss those days a little bit too, right? It's interesting. Not that long ago, I actually got rid of all of my physical media, so I don't have any physical media anymore for music, and I stream everything now. But I do sometimes get into a rut where I listen to the same playlist over and over and over and over again. So I really enjoy it when, there's just something different or unique on. We have a couple of great local radio stations.
No, we do. We really do.
Which is awesome. They expose me to a lot of interesting, different music, and I use Shazam on my phone to figure out who it is and what it is, and then I'll go and dial that up and listen to more of it. So.
One of the things that we've been doing at home is Lagunitas, like brewing company, has this YouTube series called Jam in the Van. And it's basically literally a van right? You're on YouTube right now. Go search for it right now. It's awesome. We found so much music that way because it's anybody, right? It started off like when we first heard it, it was a lot of like, it was, you know, kind of country or stuff that was more appropriate to a small setting. But now almost anybody goes there, right? There was a great one where it was like Pauly Shore just showed up and sang with this band for no reason. It was so good. But like, and then we ended up building, you know, Spotify playlists off of these people that we heard on that, you know. But I feel like that's really the only way to do it. And even YouTube Music will eventually put you in a loop, especially if you've uploaded all your own stuff. It's like, oh, here's the stuff that you were probably going to listen to next. It's like, no, just give me new stuff.
I love discovering new music. Honestly, you know, music moves me. It doesn't move everybody. Like some people don't really care that much about it, but to me, it matters a lot, and it stirs emotions, brings me back to different points in my life. So whenever I discover new music that I really like, I just have a lot of fun with it, and I'll go off and explore that genre or that artist or whatever, and you know, just listen to it and really enjoy it. And bringing that back, you know, that love of music, which I got from my father, coupled with sitting in the living room as a kid, listening to music on vintage audio gear, figuring out how that audio gear worked, playing with it. You know, back then it was an actual big physical heavy metal box with lots of knobs and switches on it. It was absolutely fascinating as a kid.
Right.
Playing with it, using it, listening to it. Later in life, that's, I think, ultimately what led me down the path of, you know, being a tinkerer and wanting to understand how electronic gadgets work. And so, yeah, I'm a hardware kind of geek at the end of the day, and I have this side hobby of buying broken down, decrepit old audio gear from the 70s and 80s and fixing it.
Yeah.
I take it apart.
Oh man, you know what I should have you do? My dad.
a lot of fun.
I think we got rid of it, but we had my grandmother's like giant cabinet, like you know, the giant ones that was supposed to be a piece of furniture.
Oh yeah.
I used to use that as my audio system for my Sega Genesis because it was like massive. It sounded great.
Yeah.
Does that matter? So I've always wanted to ask you this: like, how much matters when it comes to listening to music in particular? Like, how much matters when it comes to the quality of the audio gear? Like, at what point do you reach the point where like the digital compression itself, you're not going to get past it, right?
I you know, that's a great question. I'm old enough now where I probably couldn't discern between a very high quality, like compressed audio format versus a lossless format. I used to tell myself back in the day that I could tell the difference in it. You know, as long.
And then he went on to work for Monster Cable.
Now you don't have to choose because all the streaming options out there offer it in lossless anyway. So there's a bandwidth penalty, of course, but there's no reason not to just use the lossless.
Oh, they do it?
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta check that out.
Yeah.
Nice.
You know, I listen to music on headphones a lot, but I also have a setup at home and I listen on that. And I have obviously a setup here on my desk at work, which we use here. And yeah, to me, it doesn't really matter. It's more about the music, and then you know the gear in terms of finding interesting old pieces of gear that are broken or neglected, and then fixing them, bringing them back to life. That appeals to me on many different levels. It's like it's another way to play music, which I really enjoy. It's another way to take something apart, figure out how it works, fix it, bring it back to life, save it from going to a landfill, and maybe giving it to somebody else that can now be introduced to music and maybe enjoy it as much as I do.
Right. So we see that tinkerer spirit show up when it comes to. So obviously, CD router is a test solution that people buy and use in their own labs. But in order for us to A, test our own software, and B, sometimes help out our customers with issues that they've found, we'll run testing in our own lab. And that's the same kind of stuff happens, right? So you end up finding weird, like really, really interesting situations that we have to like dive into things like weird edge cases that like have never happened before.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you have to have sort of a natural curiosity to really dig into some of these things, right? Because sometimes it's not obvious what the heck is going on. And if you don't dig a little bit deeper, you'll never actually find it, right?
Right.
It's easy to dismiss things as, oh, that's weird. And then move on and not actually think about it anymore. I have a hard time with that. Like something, it's just the way I'm wired, right?
You dream about it, right?
I do. Yeah. If something weird happens, I want to know. I want to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
I want to know what happened.
Yeah.
And I fully admit that sometimes that consumes a lot of my time. And
no, but it's important. It's important.
It's not always important. And I think that that's something I've learned about myself. It's like sometimes you need to chase these things, and sometimes it's not important enough, so don't worry about it. Don't waste your time doing that, right? It's a balancing act. I'm always performing, but yeah, we've seen some crazy things here with testing in our lab. We've been doing this obviously since the beginning, so we have a big lab, a lot of different devices. Some of those devices are ancient. I can think of a few duds in our lab that are probably
not the old Alcatel A1000.
Yeah, 15, 16 years old. And we keep them around just because it's interesting to compare and see how things have changed. And also, I'm almost certain there's still some of those deployed out in the world. So,
oh, yeah. I mean, it was 10 years before I changed my old neck gear.
Yeah. So, doing this testing, I kind of, all of us here actually on the QA side, sort of know where the dark corners are and where to look, right? And it's always fun to go off and kind of get a new device.
Mm-hmm.
Just go down to the store, go down to Best Buy, buy the newest thing on the shelf, right? The most expensive, biggest, sweetest new router on the shelf, bring it home, hook it up to a CD router system, and just test it, see what happens, right? And I enjoy that a lot, and I know that we're always finding interesting things when we do that too. So
yeah, and it's cool that we're doing it now with smart home stuff.
Yeah,
that's been fun.
Yeah,
we already found some really weird,
terrifying things.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that started. This is so great. This is great because it's going to bring me back to what I was going to say about talking about the tinkering spirit. So like security things, right? And I got to talking to Jeremy Brown from Trinity about the same topic, about you have to have a certain attitude to get into cybersecurity investigations. And it's the same attitude. You're like, that's weird. And if you walk away at that point, you probably shouldn't be in cybersecurity. Right. But the examples of the weird shit that we found, not just with smart home products, but with Wi-Fi APs and gateways and stuff too, a lot of it's been security related.
Oh, totally.
Where they're just like broadcast, like, because there's obviously a race to get the best consumer product, and a lot of the devices that we've tested, not a lot, a few of the devices we've tested are the kind that sort of are bypassing our world a little bit, and they go around the operator deployment, and they're trying to go directly to consumer, right? What was it? The one that we found, we won't name it, but it was like the safest router you can buy.
It was absolutely not the safest.
It was absolutely not the safest one.
Yeah. It's my personal opinion. Of course, I feel like security has been sort of a secondary concern for some of these companies, right? They're focused on getting a product to market that does some specific thing, right? And a lot of times they do that specific thing really well. That's not the problem.
Right.
It's the security side of it that's the real problem.
Well, and because now, like, to bring it to smart home stuff, like knowledge of networking, and that's really what we're talking about when it comes to security now, right? Is like we're talking about the protocols that are meant to secure network communications, right? And provide authentication and authorization and making sure that things, that you're talking to the place you're supposed to be talking to and nothing gets out in the clear. That stuff is not something that the consumer electronics world of making consumer grade products knew a lot about. Right. Right. And now you're coming along, and I hate to say it's not like a blame thing, right? It's kind of like, here you go. Here's this new world that is extraordinarily complex.
Yes.
Good luck.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. People getting into this space now just don't know. They don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And that's dangerous. But I think over time, the situation will improve as people become more educated and as they beef up their testing and adopt best practices and so on.
Yeah.
It just takes time.
Some of the testing stuff that I find is hard to understand, but that we've talked about in other videos is like the stress testing is like hard to convey the value of because it's sort of ambiguous. Like the results are sort of ambiguous, but like you have to do it anyway.
Yeah, some of that testing is like stability testing, stress testing. Super important to do it, but it takes time. So it's not like you can just run a test, get an answer in 5 minutes. It might take you 5 days, right? And
you might not even know what the answer is that you're looking for.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Right. Sometimes, again, we've seen all kinds of crazy things here doing stability testing. Sometimes the issues that we see are seemingly benign, but they can result in major issues down the road. Protocol interactions slowing down over time, DHCP taking a lot longer, DNS starting to take a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
But that is an accumulation over time, right? So if you just run it for an hour, run a stability test for an hour, everything might look great. But then if you extend that out to a week, now all of a sudden you start to see everything, the whole system start to slow down.
Right. It's like, when do you
impact the user's experience, right?
Right.
And lead to a phone call
or as Bob Carrick put it in a really great way, he was like, a reboot is an unknown solution to an unknown problem. You shouldn't rely on it.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And that used to be a feature that probably still is built into some routers. The health. What was the name of the feature? It had a great name I've seen.
It was like totally a positive spin on a stupid thing.
Yes. It was a scheduled reboot.
Yes.
Spun as a health checkup or something like that.
Right.
And all it was basically reboot every Thursday at 3 p.m.
Right.
So that's one way to approach it.
It kind of weird. No, but I mean, that again, it's like if you don't have the tinkerer spirit, then that's the sort of stuff that, I don't know, kind of just be like, yeah, whatever. I remember back when I worked for you, and the thing that I always really enjoyed doing at the Iowa was when we had some sort of, usually it was test gear. Sometimes it was a device. Usually it was test gear where it was like, here's this new thing. There's a lot to it. Go figure it out. Like some of those low-level analyzers that were like, here's this box with a really weird user interface, and like, go and see if we can make it work.
Yeah, when I think back to those days at the DSL consortium way back, I think I was the second employee hired in the consortium, and it grew significantly from there. But we built that from the ground up. There was nothing in the test bed when I started. We started adding DSLAMs, test equipment, line simulators. All of that stuff was just a lot of fun to play with, figure out. We obviously automated a lot of that testing.
Oh yeah, every DSLAM had its own interface.
The loop simulators are tied in, the noise generators, all that stuff. It was a lot of fun.
Right. And a lot of it was built on really old ways of doing stuff, right? Like
totally. Right? Imagine having another crack at all of that now, right? With everything we've learned and all the modern technology and tools that we have, it would be that'd be a fun project too.
Yeah.
I'm sure everything that's in place at the Iowa has evolved significantly since our time there back in the old days. But that was a lot of fun. And do you remember the Plug Fest too? Setting those up and how much went into that?
Oh yeah.
And it big much panel matrix, and we had all the cables, and we had to come up with time slots so that everybody could have the same amount of time to test with each other. That was fun.
I remember. So what was it? It was the Alcatel DSLAM that had the T1 configuration interface.
TL1.
Yeah. And I forget what Plugfest it was before, what it was for, but keep in mind, this is like 20-year-old me. I want to cash this conversation. I was very green.
Long hair, Jason.
Yep. Where I accidentally wiped the configuration during the Plugfest and sat there until like 10 o'clock at night. Because there was no automate. You couldn't just load a configuration. You had to be like, okay, you're this now, you're this now, you're this now. I'm going to repeat the same command over and over and over 1,000 times, but I got to work.
We got really good at setting those plug fests up. We used to have to tear everything down too, right?
Because the food
difference. It was at a food warehouse. We had those giant, like 100-foot long gray Amphenol cables that we stored in a big giant rolling box, and we'd have to uncoil those and run one to each table, and then plug them all over the back of the big Frona punch down matrix. And then we'd actually have to punch down and test every single connection. It was crazy. It was a lot of work setting that up. Yeah. But we got really good at it.
And butterfly cables. I don't remember.
You remember those?
Yeah. So if anybody's ever like terminated, Cat 5 or whatever for Ethernet, right? Obviously, it's not an easy thing to do. You have to learn how to do it well. But these are like 25 pairs, and they all have it's like orange, gray, purple, gray this. And we had this one of our friends, Matt Blake, was colorblind and somehow was still able to do this.
We had that big crimper tool, right? You put it on the table, you open it up, put the cable in there, and you have 50 individual wires, and you have to get them all sorted out, crimp it, and then test it.
And then make sure that it all worked. That's fun. We were talking about terminated fiber the other day, too. That was really fun.
Oh, yeah.
Because you had to make it super clean.
Polish it.
Yeah. See, but again, I liked doing all that stuff. It was neat.
It was a lot of fun. And the IOL was a great learning ground for all that kind of stuff. So,
anything else you want to say to our actual CD router customers or contract customers or passport customers about that kind of thing? How you can trust us because we care so much.
I would just say, if you, to all of our customers, if you have any questions or if you're curious about something, let us know or dive into it yourself. Don't be afraid to dig in and investigate. And if you're looking for different strategies for how to test things, or if you want to know what some of the dark corners are that we've discovered, let us know. Send us an email. Reach out to me directly if you want. I'm on LinkedIn, or Jason can probably put my personal email up there.
Right.
Happy to answer questions.
Yeah, because it's like a different kind of. I'm not gonna. I'll toe the usual line here, where it's like the reason our support is good is because that's the kind of attitude that you have behind things. But Matt generally likes doing those things. So if you have a weird problem, you will make his day.
Weird problems are great. Send it my way. I love looking at weird problems. I find it very fun.
Right. Yeah. No, it's true. Oh, actually, so the other thing that this conversation that's reminding me of is that, again, back to the cybersecurity world, but also everywhere else, because I've talked to a couple of other people in the industry about this, about the vast number of people coming in that are pretty green, that I feel like need to be told or given a confidence boost that you should dive into weird questions and you should look at them, right? And if you come up against roadblocks, don't be discouraged, because we need to get to the next level so that we have more of you out there.
Yeah, and I would add to that, put security at the top of the list, right? Don't dismiss it or assume it's going to be handled by somebody else or something else. Make sure that security is high on the list and it's something that you implement all of the current best practices. And I'm not even sure if there's a place that lists all of those current best practices. That would probably be something that would be really useful to a lot of people.
Right.
But treat security as a first-class citizen, implement security best practices, and then test all the time. Make sure that you aren't introducing any regressions or that things aren't changing over time.
Yep. And that's why we're here. All right, cool. Well, thanks, Matt. I appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah. I feel like we could talk for probably the entire afternoon if we wanted to. So
No, it's totally true, right? We could actually pick a specific topic, like cornhole tournaments. No.
Tool.
Oh man, can we totally do a podcast about Tool? Oh man, that
Look
would
like
be
Adam
so
Jones with the long hair.
Yeah. So Matt and I are both huge Tool fans from various generations.
Yes.
I feel like I came into it in I didn't realize that Tool was good until Lateralis, right? And you have like different generations of people.
I go all the way back to Undertow when I first heard that.
Yeah.
That was blew my mind.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. Oh, and this is just a general math geek thing. Did I ever tell you about when? So I took a lot of philosophy classes, and one of the ones we did was philosophy of art, and it was really up to who the professor was as to what you sort of covered, and so he did sort of philosophy of music, right? And he was very big on classical music for very specific reasons. Some of it was, we went over like synesthesia, how if you're really listening to something that engages your brain, then you'll start to experience different sensory input and stuff like that. But he also was pointing out that from his perspective, the classical music was good because it was complex, and complex music you need to learn to like. Like you won't like it the first time you hear it because your brain isn't used to it. That's why a lot of pop songs. That's why if you've ever seen Axis of Awesome's 4-chord song, it's great, right? Where they go through and they just sing every pop song because it's da 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 da, right? Right. It's like C, G, A minor, F, and they go through every pop song you've ever heard. They go through. It's really funny, but the lesson there was that stuff becomes popular quickly, and it's not to say that it's bad. It's just it becomes popular more easily because it's more easily consumable, right? Because your brain is happy with the expectation, right? But complicated music, like classical music, you don't like the first time you hear it because you're like, "What is this?" But you listen to it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's Tool!" Like that's exactly what it's like. Even me, when I hear a new Tool album, I'm like, right? The first time you're like, that's okay, I guess, right? But then you listen to it a bunch of times, right? So what we did is, I forget the name of the guy. He worked at the IOL with us in the Void group. James. Oh, yeah. Not James Swan. What the hell is his name? He also had long curly hair, glasses. But pretty big personality. Anyway, he was in the class with me and also a Tool fan. And one day we sat down, we're like, okay, professor, let's listen to this, right? Because we knew what was really going on. And he was like, it's okay. It's kind of repetitive. And we're like, aha! We knew you would say that. Listen to it 5 or 6 times.
Did he come around?
We gave him the, who is it? Is it Third Eye? Who's they do the cello covers?
Oh, yeah. I don't remember the name of that band, but yeah.
We gave him some of those and he liked those. Yeah. Anyway, Tool is a metaphor for engineering, science, and being interested in tinkering. That's the conclusion of our podcast today.
All together.
Tool's a metaphor for a lot of things. All right. Anyway, thank you. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button, hit a like button. All of those very quintessential and cliche YouTube things are very helpful. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, please make sure you subscribe to it so you get the automatic downloads and write us a review. That is always very helpful. And we guess we'll see you next time. Maybe with Matt. Maybe in this room together with somebody else. I like that we're actually able to do this in person rather than remotely fun. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.